Okay, good morning everybody.
Morning.
As good as a morning can be during Tzvi Omer, but when a bunch of Jews get together to learn Torah and Tefillah about King Dovid, got to be something good about it. So we want to get back to our exploration of trying to understand Dovid Hamelech as best as we can, using whatever reliable sources we can dig up. But I'm going to give ourselves a bracha. Now we have all kinds of great men and maybe some women will pop up that are going to explain to us to the best of their ability with some help from Hashem what's going on. But I want to give ourselves a bracha that maybe we could get a surprise. I have a friend, Rabbi Pesach Somer. Rabbi Pesach Somer, he works for charities in Israel. Excellent teacher. He was writing a Dvar Torah about Moshe Rabbeinu's staff. And right before Pesach, I don't know when this happened, I don't know when this archaeological find was, but there was some find about exactly what the staff of Ramses II, who's supposed to be Paro, what it looked like. I don't know, I don't remember all the details, but there was some kind of great archaeological find that they found. I didn't exactly find his staff, but whatever, they found information, and they're pretty sure they interpreted correctly, that they know what Pharaoh's staff looked like, and there's a very prominent snake on there. So Rabbi Somer took this piece of archaeology, and he really worked into a Dvar Torah, and he showed how there were many psukim that made a lot more sense. Well, a lot of things, about Moshe's staff turning into a snake and eating up the other staffs. So Rabbi Somer had a whole beautiful Dvar Torah about this. Really worked out well. Now, with King David, I mean, if we want to try to understand King David's motives for doing anything, so it would be pretty hard to find something that would tell you what he was thinking unless there was a secret diary someplace. But you never know. Maybe my friend Rabbi Somer, since he's good at it, I'll let him be aware. If he hears anything interesting archaeological about King David that we could use, he should pass it on. But I got to mess this up from the start. Rabbi Weisblum would tell you that the place that people go to daven by King David's grave in Israel, actually we'll use Rabbi Weisblum's son, they're not 100% me'achuz that that's the right place, are they?
That's right.
That's right. Unfortunately, now the tour guides don't want to hear this, okay? The tour guides don't want to hear this, that some of the graves that are in Israel that people go to and pray at, I mean, it's good to pray anywhere, but there is some information that some of them, they have the wrong place. Now, the real important ones, like Marsa, Machpeil, and Chevron, that's the right place, don't worry. You want to go visit Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, you give yourself a haircut, Lag BaOmer in Miron, you're going to be okay. But there are some of them, and by the way, the one who started this trouble, I believe, was the Ariya Kaddish. He started telling people in Sfat, that's mislabeled, that's over here, that's over there. So that big rabbi was already making trouble. But I'm just saying, we're going to have to proceed with caution, because even the grave that's supposed to be David's in Israel, as the Weisblums are reminding us here, we're not 100% sure that that's even the right spot. So, we got to be careful. You deal with whatever you can. But you never know. Maybe something interesting will pop up. You never know. So we are holding by where Shmuel Hanavi, and we have to appreciate Shmuel Hanavi, the prophet Samuel. Now, is the grave Nabi Samuel in Arab territory? Is that 100% his grave? I don't know what people say about that. Right now, it's not so safe to find out. But whatever it was, from everything we know about him, he was an extremely great and wonderful person. Only lived to be 52, and in some ways, he's considered greater than Moses and Aaron. In some ways. In some areas of fulfilling potential. So Shmuel, quite a great person, and his mom's name was Chana, and it doesn't take a lot of research that the greatness of the prophet Samuel, the Gemara accredits almost completely to his mama. Incredible person, and the next time you daven Shmona Esrei, just remember, I think most of the halachot we have about how to daven Shmona Esrei properly comes from Shmuel's mom. And she was so sharp that Eli, the Kohen Gadol, who was the Gadol Ador, she even had a few things to teach the high priest. No raised voices, but Shmuel's mother was an unbelievable person. So if you know anybody named Hannah or Chana, be nice to her, because she may have a kid named Samuel that'll save the whole planet. So anyway, but let's see what happens. Now, Shmuel here now, Dr. Singerman said it's very important to know exactly where this is, because for all you know, I could have a comic book under here, and you should check me periodically. You never know what rabbis have up their sleeves. Just being sure. This is Samuel 1, chapter 16. That's where it is. So maybe, as Dr. Singerman suggested, we'll start making some copies. So that may make it even smoother. Shmuel is meeting with Yishai's sons to try to figure out which son is going to be the king of Israel to take over for Saul. And initially, David is not even there. Now, David is here, David is there, but David was not there. The Yishai comes with his other sons, very strapping, handsome fellas, and Shmuel, as great as he is, a greater prophet as he is, as great as a seer as he is, he can't see everything, but to his eyes it looks like, oh, these guys are great. One of these guys has to be the king. They look so royal. They look exactly like God needs. So here's the pasuk. In pasuk Vav 6, so that's 1:16:6. Vayihi b'voam, and it was when they came. Vayar es Eliyav. Prophet Samuel sees Eliyav, that's Dovid Hamelech's older brother. Vayemer, he says, this has got to be it. Neged Hashem Mashiach. Opposite to God, here's the Mashiach. He's going to be the anointed one. And he's all excited. If any of you have ever been on a board of directors trying to select a new rabbi or cantor or something, you may know the feeling. We got our candidate. Vayomer Hashem El Shmuel. And here's something the board of directors, even the president doesn't get this, unless you have a line that we don't know about. But Hashem says to Shmuel, no. Al tabeid al marehu. Don't look at his appearance. You're just looking at his appearance. No. We're not going to hire a Jewish king or rabbi on appearance alone. The Elgova Kamasa, and don't look at his great height. I know, he looks like a movie star and all that. Yeah, well, that's not going to work for a Jewish king. It's not going to work. And let me throw in one other comment. Now, I'm asking Natan Mechila in advance. Oh, it's really Mechila from the whole congregation, but it's even Mechila more from you. Hashem tells Samuel, don't be so overly impressed with his appearance and his great height and all that. That's not going to decide if he's a king. Many people point out over here, based on a Gemara in Tainus, that very, very often, and Natan, this is special for you, Mechila, Mea Pamim, very often, uglier rabbis are greater than handsome rabbis. Now, it's not always that way. Now, Natan, we love you, Father. He's handsome. So, we don't want to take away from Abba either way. You look okay also. But anyway, so I don't take that the wrong way. But they do quote that Gemara in Tainus. There's a whole thing, you probably know the Gemara with the princess, with the rabbi, and she says, how could such beautiful Torah be in such an ugly vessel? I'm sure you heard it quoted. I don't know if you heard it quoted from a handsome rabbi or an ugly rabbi, but whatever. There are some people that make a comment about that over here in selecting who should be the king. And we won't mention names, but I think we definitely know there were at least 2 presidents that were elected to be head of this country because of their looks. Let's just say he ran against Nixon. Okay, but I know that a lot of articles you read, they say it was that, and they say it was black and white TV from the time and all that.
Yeah. Nixon refused to wear makeup for the debate.
Yeah. That's a frightening thing right there. Nixon and makeup, that's a frightening thing right there.
Yeah, well.
But let him rest in peace. Let him rest in peace. I think he was good to Israel most of the time, so let it be. But Hashem says, listen, Shmuel, that brother is not the one. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, so this handsome, dashing, tall brother isn't going to get picked. That must mean that Dovid's an ugly guy. That doesn't exactly work out. Dovid is also a handsome guy, but he's
redhead.
He's scruffy, redhead looking. So, I mean, he can be a different kind of handsome. And out of respect for David, I will not compare him to any other actor that you were thinking of. But they don't get the impression, we're not taking him because he's too handsome. It doesn't say too handsome. Shem says, just don't be fooled by the looks. That doesn't mean by exclusion that David is not handsome. David's just fine. It's just when you see him, your first impression isn't, all right, you're going to be my king. It's a different impression. But Hashem says, let me tell you, and Hashem is just talking to Shmuel, that brother over there, Kima Astihu, I'm disgusted with him as far as being a king. Now, why? So, they explain, because Eliyav was a fine fellow, but he wasn't the greatest at controlling his anger, and he wasn't the greatest at controlling his jealousy. And the last thing you need in a monarchy is a king that has an anger problem and a jealousy problem. Because we know in history there have been plenty of kings with anger problems and jealousy problems, and they did things to their wives and their families and to the people and things like that. So you don't want that. So Hashem says, Shmuel, let me give you an introduction on how to pick a leader. Ki lo asher yireh ha'adam. It doesn't go by what the human being sees. Shmuel, you're a great man, but you're still a human being. And you can make mistakes, and you're making one right now. He goes, let me explain something to you, Shmuel. Ki ha'adam yireh le'einayim. A person sees what their eye sees. You make some guesses, and that's it. V'Hashem yireh le'levav. But I'm God, and I look at the heart. I can see a lot of things that you can't, so it's not really fair. But he says, you just have to understand something. Maybe in your world you pick people by the looks, and we know that's a very big American problem that we struggle with all the time. Sometimes we get fooled, sometimes we don't. But Hashem tells Shmuel, you have to understand, as we go to pick a king, the fellow I'm going to pick, I'm going to be looking more at his heart and less at his face and things like that. There is a very, very big argument. Well, here's a little chop of archaeology, but it's very, very controversial. Years ago, years and years and years and years ago, and good luck to any archaeologist that can find this, there was supposed to be a non-Jewish king that really was interested in Moshe. He was really interested in Moshe, and he hired people to go look at him and to make a picture of him. This goes way, 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 way back. Now, and there's all kinds of controversy over this information. That they really have a big tumult about it. But you can. I know one place. I know the Baditcheva rabbi from Russia discusses it, but it's all over the place. So the way it was supposed to be, and I have no idea where this painting is, if it exists and all that. He sent them to draw a painting of Moshe Rabbeinu. Guy comes back, and the king said, that can't be Moses. But that face, such a great man, such a great leader, went to heaven, that can't be Moses. No way, with that face. Now, I don't know if he had always face analysts and handwriting analysts. I don't know what he had, but he said, I can't believe that. But the way the story goes is the fellow was supposed to have done some more research. I don't know if he himself went to send someone else he trusted, but he's supposed to have found out that Moses did look like the picture. And the king was disappointed because Moses did not look like you dreamed Moses was going to look like. He didn't look like Charlton Heston or Burt Lancaster or anybody else, or George Clooney, whoever else you like. And there's all kinds of Torah philosophical discussions about if by nature Moshe may have not been such a wonderful person and he worked on himself. But the bottom line is, we're still waiting for somebody to find this picture and verify it. if the story's straight at all. But there's a message Hashem is telling him, we're not going to go by appearances. Appearances are very misleading, so I'm looking at his heart. So Shmuel, don't get too carried away. Now, Rashi has a little thing he wants to mention to us over here. Hashem says, I am disgusted with Eliyav to be a king because he is a kasan. Now, a kasan, Natan would tell us, there's a difference between having kas and being a kasan. It's not the same thing. You have a good way to explain that to the gang? Difference between someone sheyesh lo kas and kasan?
Kasan is someone that always is angry, and kas is temporary.
Yeah. Imagine a king like that. Woo! That is dangerous. That is really imagine a military leader like that. We had some. I don't want to put them on the table together with King David, but we'll discuss this military business another time. And Rashi mentions an example of his kas problem, and he's a grown man over here. I mean, they say in this incident, David, I think according to Moses, is already in his 20s, and these brothers are older, and he's still working on anger. And Rashi mentions there was an example where Eliyav got really upset with David later on for wanting to help out militarily. His brother wants to help out militarily, the other brother gets mad at him. So Rashi's just warning us, as others do, that he may look very, very nice, but you do not want a king with an anger problem. You don't really want any government official with an anger problem. You're going to have a whole litany of issues with that. Now, going over to borrow from the Mamlayas, from the Sephardic world, and he collects them all over the place. So he says, with this issue of skin deep, he says we human beings have another hindrance. Not only when we look at somebody are we only judging by what we see. It's not just that. He uses a great word, mitrashem. And mitrashem comes from the word roshem, and roshem, you may have heard, is an impression. It's not just that when I look at someone, I only have their face, what I see, to figure out what I should do with them. Mitrashem means I look at them, and their face, their being, that makes an indelible impression on me. So it's a little bit hard to judge, more than a little bit hard to judge, who to pick to be a leader, because not only are the looks a misrepresentation of the heart, those looks make an impression. That's a different level. It's one thing to look at someone, another thing that looking at them makes an impression. And I think we all have met at least one person in our life that you met them, they thought they were either going to be rotten, or wonderful, and you found out that the person, that man and woman, is absolutely nothing like what you thought they were going to be like. King Shlomo sums it up the best. Now, Bruce, this bud is for you. Bruce says one of these days he wants a real explanation, no fluff, of why King Solomon was allowed to have 1,000 wives and why Bruce Friedman only gets one. Could you imagine 1,000 Mrs. Bruce Friedmans? It would be a different planet.
Yeah. And
you know what? You wouldn't be here. So I'm glad you only have one wonderful, wonderful wife. So if whatever is going on over there, that's a tough one. But King Solomon knew something about women, right? You're married to 1,000 ladies. Either you're a glutton for punishment, or you like beauty, or whatever you want to say. You're trying to learn from them, or you just know a lot about women. King Solomon said like this. This is in Mishlei and Proverbs. He said, now, some of you a little bit older remember a song from the movies. A pretty girl is like a... Bruce, is that from Wife 50 or Wife 700?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. A pretty girl and St. Kevin for little girls and all those nice songs. Well, King Shlomo says like this. A beautiful woman. Visaras Tama, but there's a bad taste to her. She's got a cruddy personality. She's very beautiful. And we're in shul, so we definitely will not give examples. My mother says the most beautiful woman in your life is always supposed to be your mother, whether it's true or not. But anyway, so King Shlomo says, a beautiful woman, Visaras Tama, and she has a bad attitude, a bad taste, is like a beautiful golden nose ring in the nose of a pig. Talk about calling a spade over there. Now, I hope you don't run into this beautiful woman too often, and I certainly hope she's not in your family, but King Solomon, who's very experienced, is just telling us, beauty can really fool you. You know, you meet the person, you get an impression, and you find out, oh my gosh, I am so way off. So he says, the Mamloe, he says this is also part of the message. King Solomon, Shmuel Hanavi, you know, you're just judging by the eyes. You see a handsome, dapper fellow, this Aliyah, brother of Dovid Hamelech, but you know, you're getting impressions, and you can't always go by that. And he says two other words that are very, very powerful. A human being's vision has a gevul. It's two Hebrew words. Riato mugbelet. It has a gevul. It has a boundary. Hashem says, Shmuel, I know you mean well, but human beings are created with boundaries. I know, because I'm God. I gave you the ability, I gave you the boundaries, and I know you're trying to help me, but you're always going to have that border stopping you. There's just so much you could do with your capabilities, but I'm telling you, this handsome, dapper guy, he's not the one. Move on to another brother. So he's going through brother after brother, and every single one doesn't work. All right. So, and King David's supposed to have, you know, fairly decent parents, Yishai and Nitzevet, and they have all these sons, and it's just, and now there is a little chip on David's shoulder that we have to keep. Could you imagine if somebody came to someone's house and they want one of your children for a job? Now, this is very hard to understand. I don't have an understanding of this. Although our patriarch Jacob did a little bit of it too. You imagine someone comes with a knife offer, but they only can make the offer to one of your relatives, you know? And you invite all the relatives except for one. Now this is worse because it's sons. So you have the prophet Shmuel, he comes and there's a whole banquet over there, and someone's going to be the king, and Yishai invites 7 of his 8 sons, and you didn't invite one son to come. That's such a hard thing, and David's going to eventually find this out, and he's going to be the winner. But you have to ask yourself, wow, how did that affect David's life? Your father Yishai, who was a great man, but not an easy man to understand. Torah says great things about him, but he's definitely hard to understand. I mean, imagine going through life. There was my father didn't invite me to that. Now, I wound up winning anyway with my father. Gee, like, what was my father thinking? How does my father feel about me? Does he love me less? And we all know that Yaakov Avinu made the same mistake with favoring Joseph. And there is not one Pirush, one commentary that says our patriarch was right. Now, Yaakov Avinu is our grandfather. He's a wonderful person, but, you know, you're still human, and he made a mistake. And I'm pretty sure, I don't think there is anybody out there that tries to come up with an explanation. Well, Jacob was really right for favoring Joseph with the coat and spending more time. I don't think anybody does that. The Gemara in Shabbos says it was a mistake, and says learn from your grandfather. Don't ever play favorites with your children at all. At all. It's a hard thing to understand, but all right. But in the big score, our grandfather's a great man. But I'm just saying, you just have to remember, King David has assets and he has disabilities, quote unquote, or hindrances through his whole life, his whole 70 years. That's got to be a chip on his shoulder. Yeah, I know I'm the king, and I know I rode Tillim, and I know I'm great in battle, and all that. And I had some good kids, some not such good kids. But my father, I didn't totally have my father's approval. So let me tell you a stupid story. All right, but it issues a point. I'm not picking on Yishai, and I hope I'm not hitting your feelings. There is a man that trained, and there's a fact. You could look it up. There's a guy that trained to be in a certain contest. What was the context? it's either Nidik's or Nathan's hot dog eating contest. And gentlemen, I'm not making this up because the story is so whacked out, I couldn't make it up. Now, the world champion of eating hot dogs a certain way in a certain amount of time belonged to some skinny Oriental guy.
Kobayashi.
You know him personally. He must eat a lot of cholent in your house. He can eat more hot dogs than David Cohn, even though he's half your size. All right. I guess he has a system. That's right.
Put hot dogs in your children.
So this guy made up his mind, I'm going to be Kobayashi. So help me. Is it Nidik's or Nathan's? Nathan's? All right.
Nathan's.
They have the contest?
Yeah.
So this guy, he trained. I do not want to know how you trained to win that contest. In Hebrew, in Halakha, it's called Achila Gasa. And Natan's going to realize that Achila Gasa is not just when your mother tells you you're overeating. Achila Gasa is a real halachic issue. There's a lot of Torah about it. But however you trained for it, this guy trained and he won. So afterwards, a reporter interviewed the guy. All right, I hope he gave him Pepto-Bismol. And he said to the guy, why did you do this? Why did you do this? Is it because you love hot dogs so much? He says, my entire life, my father never had any respect for me. My father always looked at me as a loser, and he told me I'm a loser my whole life. For once, I wanted to win something, get the certificate and say, Dad, look at me. You're Nebuch's son. I actually won something. You got to believe me because here's the certificate. So that's very sad, that's really sad. But we do know that there are fathers like that, whatever is in their head. And I mean, Yishai was a great man. I hope he had more in his head. But whatever the explanation is, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, we just got to put that on David's package there, that he has like the shadow that, gee whiz, the greatest prophet came to anoint someone in my family and I wasn't even invited to the meeting. They had to call for me separate. That's a hard thing to go through life with, and we'll have to see if this shows up. If maybe later on certain things David does or doesn't do has something to do with his father. Now Gil is thinking, hey, I thought Sigmund Freud said, lay down on the couch and say, why do you hate your mother? Usually it's the mother in classic psychology, but you should just know that Dovid Hamelech had an excellent relationship with his mother. Her name was Nitzevet, and from the information we have, there was a point where Yishai, Jesse they call him in English, had some misgivings about David and his background and what kind of person he was, and his wife Nitzevet set him straight. She set him real straight. So I guess he had a better relationship with his mom and his dad. If the psychiatrist in you wants to do something with that, maybe you'll be right. So hang in there with that. But here enters David. So now I'm in 11. Vayomer Shmuel Yishai. Shmuel says to Yishai, Hatamu Hana'arim. Are all the lads finished? Got any more kids? Some of you not telling me how God sent me here. Somebody else, you got another kid? Vayom, he goes, yeah. Sha'ar HaKatan. There remains the younger one. And we're going to be interested in that statement. Yet remains the little one. But he's not 5 years old. He's much older. V'hinei roa b'tzon. Behold, he's shepherding in the sheep. That's where he is. Vayomer Shmuel Yishai. Samuel says to Yishai, Shilcha v'kachenu. Send for him and take him over here. I have to meet it. I have to meet him. And Shmuel says, I'm not playing games. I see you have a very nice meal here planned. But you know what? Ki lo nosov ad ba'ufo. We are not going to sit down and have this nice meal till that kid comes over here. So Shmuel's already all kinds of wheels going in his mind. He's like, don't give me any stories. Where's the kid? I got to meet this kid. All right. So everybody gets pretty busy with this phrase, Od Sha'ar Katan, that there yet remains the little one. Now, the classic people do not go that easy on Jesse. I just got to mention something. Part of the greatness of the Torah is that we can learn about great men and women, and we get to hear about their faults also. We get to hear about their faults. The Torah generally does not cover that over. So sometimes, a person could say, well, supposed to be a great person, is this fault, that fault, I don't know, great to know. So a friend of mine, my friend Mark Berman, says like this. And sometimes in relationships we do this too. You meet somebody and one or two times they do something you don't like and you want to throw them away altogether. So my friend Mark says, before you judge, so let's say you learn about your favorite personality in the Torah, and let's say you found 11 and a half things you don't like about him, and you're having a hard time, you're researching here, there, and everywhere. So my friend Mark has a challenge. Try to get an idea how many good things they did in their life and how many things that you found that you're having a hard time. And then look at your own biography and try to make a list of how many good things you did and how many bad things and not such good things or interpretable things that you did. So my friend Mark just said, if you get in that enigma over there, take a look at yourself first. And you will probably, even if you're a nice guy, you're probably going to have a very, very long list. And you can start saying, oh my God, in 1962 I do that. In 1971 I told my mother this and this. And then my friend Mark just said, make a list on yourself before you go after someone else. Explore all you want, research all you want, question all you want. But that's my friend Mark's challenge. And you should just know, my wife tells this to me all the time. If I'll be married 40, you're married 40 years, right? All right, I'm not married 40 years yet, but I'm getting there. Maybe when I've been married 40 years, I'll listen to her. Because I can be like that sometimes. Sometimes someone will get on my nerves, a few times. That's it. I won't be friends with them anymore. And my wife will, what's with you? The person, 96% of the time, they're great. All right, so that time, very appropriate after Yontiv, with relatives. Everybody's stuck in the house for a few days together. So it happens. But as great as Yishai reputation is, they pick on him. So right away they look at that one word. He said, now this is again Samuel 1 chapter 16 verse 11. He says, Od Sha'ar HaKatan, there yet remains the one. So the linguistic rabbis and all experts out there, they really like that word Sha'ar. Because in regular Hebrew, Natan would probably tell us, you just say
Nishal.
Yeah, you say Nishar Katan or Od Katan, but this whole thing, Od Sha'ar Katan, so everybody seems to feel there's a message over there, and it's not a very lovely message, because they say, now Yishai may not have said it that clearly, but he intimated, the leftover son. The leftover son. Now David wasn't standing there when it was said, did he find out? How did he find out and all that? That you can hack around with all day. But still, once again, there seems to have been some kind of attitude problem, which I'm sure Yishai could not hide from David, that, the leftover son. Not just leftover, that the 7 are here and he's over there. He's my leftover son, that one over there. I didn't research at all trying to defend the situation over here. I'm just going to tell you one thing, and depending where your parents and grandparents are from, maybe you'll understand. Parenting varies from culture to culture, and my wife tells me things that her European Bubby and Zadie did and said that are very, very wonderful, and some things that by our standards are absolutely, it just seems to be, if you study other countries and the history of parenting and grandparenting in other places, there were just some very wonderful things that are done in the world, and some things that by our standards, I'll just mention one thing, you probably read about this. by Jews, whatever kind of Jews you want. And again, if you're over 70, you probably really saw this. There was a tendency of Jewish grandfathers and Jewish grandmothers too to favor the boys over the girls, to the point that if there'd be, this is the classic one, as is blieb jetzt ein, what do you call it, ein polka. If there's one drumstick left, the yingala, the boychik's gonna get it. There's such a now to us, that's, hey, that's not right. That's not right. How could you do that? You experienced that? You're not even 40 yet, and you saw people like that. My wife told me things that my wife doesn't hold it against them. My wife just realizes, they grew up in Poland, they got a different culture. So I don't know if that's part of all this, but whatever it is, we go back to Gemara and Shabbos. The Gemara Shabbos clearly says favoring one child over another in any way is dead wrong.
Right.
Don't do it. And you don't need big psychologists to tell you. You know that's trouble.
What do the sources say was Yishai's difficulty with David? What did David not present to him, or did not do, that caused Yishai to say, he's not quite measuring up to my other sons?
So they don't seem to say that David had misbehaved or anything like that. They talk about there were some issues that were going on at the time of David's conception. There were some, as we say, shalom bayis issues that were going on between Yishai and David's mother Nitzevet. There was some problems, and because of those problems, or David was born out of those problems. That I'll give you one. I'll give you one more. There's a lot of talk about this. There was a period where Yishai and his wife Nitzevet, they weren't being together as husband and wife so much. So it wasn't such a wonderful time, and that bore into a whole lot of misunderstandings and accusations, and then came David. So everybody talks about that. And when I said before that the mother set Yishai straight, it seems to be it took years for Nitzevet to set Yishai straight, and it doesn't seem all straight until right here. It seems to be that his wife actually, I told him, she says all those misconceptions, all those accusations, everything you said was wrong. And he says, good, if not better than the rest of your kids. So it goes back to the mother and father again. But I didn't see anybody mention David doing anything bad or anything like that, misbehaving and throwing paper airplanes. But it was an absolute mess with some really almost soap opera level accusations that all turned out to be false. But there are a lot of Gemaras about that. When a child is born at a time when there's strife between husband and wife, so sometimes you could really be looking for trouble. But it turned out not to be true.
Is there any thought of the sense that there's some higher purpose in these family issues, because not only did David experience them with his parents, he experienced them himself with his children. Shlomo had difficulties, with his relations and so forth. Is there any sense of why, in some kind of greater meaning to why those generations had such difficulties in terms of their family dynamics?
So a lot of people write about that, and one of the things they say is, Rabbi Wine talks about it an awful lot. There's two things. If somebody comes from a perfect background in every way, they can't be a leader. Such a person, they are not capable of being they cannot lead people. They can't. And a major part of that issue is that they don't understand people. They just do not understand people. So if somebody had some bumps in their background, now you're right, we'd have to keep track and watch the thread all the way through to Dovid with Avshalom and Shlomo with his problems over there. But One thing they write about is that at least if the leader had some bumps in their life, they have a shot at understanding people better. But which bumps it should be, I'll just give you an example. This one second, let me just make sure. Okay. I don't want to say what city because it could be Lashon Hara. When my oldest son, Rabbi Naftali Karp, was very, very small, we lived in a far-off city. Natan, you were born here?
In New Jersey.
Okay, so you are aware that before your father came to the Ira Bira of Maryland, your father had to be a rabbi in other little places here and there because that's how you become a rabbi. Sometimes you have to go to all kinds of wild places, and then you're ready, you're mukhshar to come to Annapolis. So I was in a little town, and the town was so little that anybody who used the mikvah was on the mikvah board, which in the larger city is unheard of. But in the little towns, I got news for you. You know, you have self-service gas station. I was in a town where it was self-service mikvah. You filled up the mikvah yourself. Isn't that wild? They wouldn't let you do that in any major city. So my wife had to be on the board, the mikvah board, because anybody who used it, you know. So the rabbi also had to be on the board. Okay, fine. It's a small one-horse town, so you have these ladies who use the mikvah, and some of the husbands and the rabbi. But there was one problem. The rabbi. This is really good. The rabbi at that point wasn't married. He wasn't married at that point. And he'd been living all by himself for a long time. I have to add something to this. He lived alone, no women in the house. And there's a big difference between not being married, but there's still sisters and mothers in the house, and not being married and there ain't no women in the house. So this is a rabbi, a very, very fine man. He lived alone, and there were no women around. So on the board agenda, there came up that the door in the bathroom of the mikvah is broken, we need to fix it. So everybody there said, of course, what do you mean? The bathroom door is broken in the mikvah, we got to fix it. And the rabbi said, why? And this is like a very big Talmud Chacham. Like sitting there, Rabbi so-and-so, there is a bathroom next to the mikvah, the door is falling off the hinge, it does not cost a lot, we need somebody to fix the door. And the rabbi sat there, my wife told me this, why? Well, because rabbi, usually when doors fall off, we put them back on. But the rabbi said, who needs a door? Why don't they just go to the bathroom without a door? So then all the women there realized that this was a man that didn't live around women. And we know guys are guys, and sometimes guys go to the bathroom however. And because this poor rabbi, there just were no women in his life. And we're not going to get into any seat up and down jokes if you have that with your children or your brothers and sisters. But my wife basically said that the women had a hard time explaining to him that women, that's not going to work. It just doesn't work for women. And he really didn't know where they were coming from. You know what I mean? And my wife was there when it happened. So why am I bringing this? In the end, they got the door fixed, okay? In the end, they did. But I'm just trying to say, on the important point that Brian's bringing up, is that sometimes you could have a leader, and if they don't have certain life experience, like they're not sensitive to things, and like they really, really don't get it. Now, he was pretty good. He was sensitive to most other things. He was just a nice fellow, but like he just didn't get that. Now, I'm sure King David and King Shlomo didn't have that problem with doors on bathrooms in the world of outhouses, but I'm just saying that's a problem. Hopefully, to be empathetic, but we'll have to follow that thread. So I just want to share one other thing from the Imam Layas on this thing over here. Others say that without realizing it, the father was actually complimenting his son, maybe even more than he meant to. He said, I have a leftover son, and he's shepherding with the sheep. When Shmuel heard shepherding with the sheep, lights went on. The old kind of light bulbs and the new kind of light bulbs. But he says, shepherding sheep. Now, the father may have been thinking about it in a negative way. I can't do anything else to send him out with stinky sheep. Shmuel said, sheep? He shepherded sheep? Wow! Some of our greatest leaders got their training with shepherding sheep. You can go down the line all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. Everybody knows the Medrash, that one of the final things that got Moshe the job was when there was that poor little sheep bleeding, and Moshe carried him, and he got the sheep a drink and all that. You know, to be a leader of the Jewish people, you don't necessarily need the biggest degree. You may need a degree in sheep. And they quoted Gemara that Hashem does generally not give greatness to a person until he researches him with a small thing. And they bring all our greats over here. And they go into great detail how David was a very, very caring shepherd. He was extremely careful about their safety, and he would be very careful with the kind of grass and grazing he would give each kind of sheep. He made sure that he knew the age of the sheep, the kind of the sheep, the conditions of their teeth, and the Medrash goes to great trouble to show how with careful scrutiny, Dovid took care of his sheep's needs. So the bottom line is that what Jesse may have thought of as a minus, when Shmuel hears he's a shepherd, that's a plus. And they go so far as to say, now this is a big linguistic thing over here, and I'm very glad that we have Natan here to say that regular Hebrew just would have been Yisha. When Yisha would say, do you have another son? He would have just said, what do you say, Nishar Katan?
Nishar Od Katan.
Right, Nishar Od Katan, right. But here it's like this word Shin Aleph Reish, that's definitely not the regular form the way you'd say it. So everybody's real interested in it. But there are those that take it one step further, that maybe the son got complimented. Because Sha'ar, the leftover one, sometimes can also mean the humble one, the modest one. So it already happened, but it would be a nice wish if maybe there were times when Yishai said things that were condescending to David. Maybe there were other times that it was meant to be condescending, but somehow it came out, being able to be taken as a compliment. But that's where we leave Dovid over here, and he is about to get anointed very, very quickly. But Shmuel is going to be a little bit shaken up by the red scruffiness, but Hashem is going to say, absolutely don't look at that. And throughout history, we have many, many, many great people with red hair. The Chassam Sofer had red hair. And Rabbi Heinemann, if I'm not mistaken, said that the red hair of Dovid came from Rabbi Weisblum's favorite person in the whole Torah. Do we know? Natan will tell you if you're right. Who is Rabbi Weisblum's favorite person in the entire Torah? Russ. Don't you think Russ is at your father's
Ruth,
top five?
He wrote about Ruth.
He didn't write Roof Talk for nothing. So it's got to be in the top five. Your father's top five favorite. So Rabbi Heinemann had commented that I don't know how much genetic research was done, but whatever. There were those that talk about that King David got the red hair from Grandma Russ, the wonderful Moabite convert. So we'll continue with the adventures and try to understand. Thanks for hanging out. Eat and drink some more.
So